Thomas Gallagher had been driving for hours, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. The winding roads of rural Massachusetts seemed endless, and the darkness of the night only added to his fatigue. He squinted through the windshield, searching for any sign of civilization, a place where he could rest for the night. Finally, a flickering neon sign appeared in the distance, Roadside Inn. The motel looked like it had seen better days. The paint was peeling off the walls, and the sign was missing a few letters, but it was open. Thomas pulled into the empty parking lot, turned off the engine, and stepped out of his car. The air was cool and damp, and the smell of mildew and decay greeted him. He walked to the reception area, a small, dimly lit room that seemed frozen in time. A bell sat on the counter, and he tapped it, the sound echoing in the otherwise silent room. After a few moments, a middle-aged woman with a tired expression and a cigarette dangling from her lips appeared from a door behind the counter. "Room for the night?" Thomas asked, his voice rough from hours of disuse. The woman nodded slowly, her eyes dull and uninterested. $30, she said in a gravelly voice. Thomas handed over the cash and received a rusted key attached to a wooden block with the number 3 carved into it. The woman pointed down a dark corridor. "Room's down there." Thomas thanked her and made his way down the hall. The floorboards creaked under his weight, and the air grew colder and more oppressive with each step. He reached room 3 and unlocked the door, stepping into a small, dingy room. The wallpaper was yellowed and peeling, and the bed looked like it hadn't been cleaned in years. But he was too tired to care. He locked the door behind him, dropped his bag on the floor, and collapsed onto the bed without bothering to undress. Sleep came quickly, but it was not peaceful. Thomas's dreams were filled with images of dark, shifting shapes and the feeling of being trapped. He tossed and turned, trying to escape the nightmare, but it clung to him, growing more vivid with each passing moment. He woke with a start, his heart pounding in his chest. The room was pitch black, and for a moment he couldn't remember where he was. He reached for the lamp on the bedside table and flicked it on. The dim light revealed a horrifying sight. The walls seemed to be moving, the floor undulating beneath him. Before he could comprehend what was happening, the room was filled with a deafening roar. The ground beneath him began to shake violently, and the furniture toppled over. Thomas tried to stand, but the floor gave way beneath him, and he was swallowed by darkness. Thomas fell through the floor, the air rushing past him as he plummeted into the abyss. He tried to scream, but his voice was lost in the chaos. The descent seemed endless, the darkness all-consuming. When he finally hit the bottom, the impact was bone-jarring. Pain shot through his body, and he struggled to catch his breath. He lay there for what felt like an eternity, the darkness pressing in on him from all sides. Slowly, he became aware of his surroundings. The air was damp and musty, and the sound of dripping water echoed through the cavernous space. He realized he was in some sort of underground chamber, the walls slick with moisture and covered in strange, phosphorescent fungi. Thomas tried to stand, but his legs wouldn't support him. He crawled forward, his hands searching for something solid to hold onto. The ground beneath him was soft and unstable, and he realized with a sinking feeling that he was on the edge of a massive sinkhole. As his eyes adjusted to the darkness, Thomas could make out the faint outlines of the room above. The sinkhole had swallowed the entire motel room, and he could see the remnants of the bed, the lamp, and his bag scattered around the edges of the chasm. Panic set in as he realized the extent of his predicament. There was no way out, no one to hear his cries for help. He was trapped in the darkness, alone and helpless. The ground beneath him shifted, and he felt himself sinking further into the abyss. He clawed at the loose earth, trying to pull himself to safety, but it was no use. The sinkhole was relentless, pulling him deeper and deeper into the darkness. Thomas's mind raced as he tried to think of a way to escape. He remembered the stories he had heard about sinkholes, how they could open up without warning and swallow everything in their path. But he had never imagined he would find himself in one, trapped and alone. As he struggled, he felt something cold and slimy brush against his hand. He recoiled in horror, his heart pounding in his chest. He realized with a growing sense of dread that he was not alone in the darkness. The air was filled with strange, skittering noises, and Thomas could feel the presence of something moving around him. He strained to see in the dim light, his eyes searching for any sign of what was lurking in the shadows. Suddenly, a pair of glowing eyes appeared in the darkness, followed by another, and then another. Thomas's breath caught in his throat as he realized he was surrounded by a swarm of strange, insect-like creatures. Their bodies were covered in a hard, chitinous shell, and their legs clicked and clattered as they moved. The creatures closed in on him, their mandibles snapping and clicking. Thomas tried to back away, but the ground beneath him gave way, and he fell further into the sinkhole. The creatures followed, their glowing eyes fixed on him. Thomas's mind was a whirlwind of fear and confusion. He had to find a way to escape, to get away from the horrors that surrounded him. But as the creatures closed in, he realized with a sinking feeling that there was no way out. He was trapped in the darkness, with no hope of escape. As the creatures descended upon him, Thomas's mind went blank. The last thing he saw was the glowing eyes, the snapping mandibles, and the darkness closing in around him. He felt a searing pain as the creatures tore into his flesh, their mandibles slicing through his skin. The pain was unbearable, and Thomas screamed, his voice echoing through the cavernous space. But there was no one to hear him, no one to save him from the horrors that surrounded him. He was alone in the darkness, his body being devoured by the creatures that lurked in the sinkhole. As the pain faded and darkness claimed him, Thomas's last thought was of the roadside inn, the motel that had become his tomb. He had checked in for a night of rest, but he had found only horror and death. By morning, there was nothing left of Thomas Gallagher. The sinkhole had claimed its victim, and the creatures had devoured every last piece of him. The roadside inn stood silent and empty, a place of darkness and death. And so, the legend of the roadside inn grew, a tale of horror and mystery that would be told for generations to come. The motel remained, a relic of a forgotten time, its flickering neon sign a beacon for those who dared to seek shelter within its walls. But those who stayed at the roadside and never left, their bodies claimed by the sinkhole and the creatures that lurked within. The motel was a place of horror, a death trap for those who dared to enter its doors. And the darkness waited, hungry and patient, for the next victim to arrive.